In the drought-ravaged Wyoming Territory of 1868, barren lands and desperate men surrounded Hannah Coulter's isolated ranch with its precious stream. Widowed and stubborn, Hannah defied both the cattle barons coveting her water rights and the townspeople's scorn for her independence. When she discovers a wounded Cheyenne warrior on her land, her choice between frontier hatred and human compassion ignites a conflict that will draw blood from both worlds. Hannah Coulter never expected mercy would prove more dangerous than a bullet. Dawn broke over Hannah Coulter's Wyoming ranch as she stepped onto her porch to find herself surrounded by dozens of painted Cheyenne warriors on horseback. Their faces were expressionless, weapons ready. Hannah raised her shotgun, hands trembling. The warriors parted as a familiar figure approached, the wounded brave she saved yesterday, now adorned in war paint. He dismounted, walked to her, and knelt, offering his knife handle first. "My life yours. Now all our lives yours." The warriors dismounted and knelt in unison. Hannah's neighbor rode up, saw the scene, and raised his rifle in panic. Hannah had to decide in an instant whether to trust these warriors or her own kind. 2 days earlier, Hannah had stood at her property line, watching cattle baron Ethan Coleman's men drive a herd past her fence. The dust settled on her sun-worn face. 3 seasons of drought had left the territory desperate for water. Her small ranch with its steady stream had become a target. Coleman rode over, removing his hat with practiced courtesy. His smile never reached his eyes. "Offer still stands, Mrs. Coulter. Marriage would solve your problems." Hannah turned away. "And create new ones. A woman alone can't survive out here much longer. My husband's been dead 2 years. I'm still here." Coleman's jaw tightened. "These aren't ordinary times. Railroad coming through means change is coming. Best be on the winning side." That evening, Hannah bathed her face in stream water, watching sunset colors melt across the plains. Something dark caught her eye downstream, a shape that didn't belong. She approached cautiously, rifle ready. A man lay face down at the water's edge. Blood darkened the stream around him. Not white. Cheyenne. His chest rose slightly with labored breath. Hannah looked toward town. Helping an Indian was dangerous. Leaving him to die was unthinkable. She dragged him to her barn, tearing her skirt for bandages. The brave's wounds were deep, a bullet in his shoulder, another grazed his skull. His skin burned with fever. Hannah worked through the night, forcing water and willow bark tea between his cracked lips. Near dawn, hoofbeats approached. Hannah covered the brave with hay and stepped outside to meet Marshal Turner and his militia riders. "Morning, Mrs. Coulter. Seen any Indians?" "Just my own shadow." Turner dismounted. "Cheyenne raiding party hit an Army convoy yesterday. 3 soldiers dead." "Sorry to hear it. Army's offering $50 for information. 100 if we catch the savages." "Haven't seen any." Turner studied her face. "Not like you to miss things on your land." "Been busy with my own problems." "Coleman says you're being stubborn about selling. Man's trying to help you." "Don't need his kind of help." After they left, Hannah returned to the barn. While cleaning the brave's wounds, she extracted 2 bullets. Army issue. Something didn't match the marshal's story. That night, the brave's fever broke. His eyes opened, dark, alert, assessing his surroundings. He reached for a knife that wasn't there. Hannah stepped back, rifle raised. "I saved your life. Don't make me regret it." He studied her, then nodded slowly. "Who are you?" she asked. "Tall Wolf, son of Black Bear." Hannah knew that name. Black Bear, the peace chief who had disappeared during negotiations with the army 3 months ago. "Your people think you're dead," she said. "Warriors come. At dawn." His English was broken but clear. "Signal fire. They must know." Hannah understood the risk. If she helped him signal his people, her ranch would become a target for both sides. If she refused, she might face Cheyenne vengeance alone. "Why should I trust you?" Tall Wolf touched his wounds. "Army say peace talk. Army shoot first." Hannah thought of her late husband's suspicions about Army corruption in the territory, about land grabs disguised as Indian conflicts. If I help you, your people won't attack my ranch. My life yours now. Blood debt. Hannah made her decision. After midnight, she helped Tall Wolf to a ridge where he built a small smoke signal fire. They worked in silence, aware of every sound in the darkness. His fingers were deft despite his wounds. He placed green pine needles on the flames, sending white smoke signals into the black sky. Will they understand? Hannah asked. They watch. They wait. Back at the ranch, Hannah prepared. She filled water barrels, loaded extra ammunition, and secured her livestock. Tall Wolf watched her from the corner of the barn, his expression unreadable. Your people, will they attack or come in peace? Depend on you, he said simply. As first light crept across the plains, Hannah sensed movement. She stepped onto her porch, rifle ready. Mounted warriors materialized from the morning mist, surrounding her property. Their painted faces and armed presence struck fear through her core. Tall Wolf emerged from the barn, standing taller despite his wounds. One of the warriors rode forward, exchanged words with Tall Wolf in their language, then looked at Hannah with newfound respect. Hoofbeats sounded from the road. Ethan Coleman galloped toward the ranch, rifle already raised. He saw the warriors and took aim. Hannah, get down! Hannah stepped between Coleman and the Cheyenne. One shot could ignite a massacre. Tall Wolf walked forward, past Hannah, toward the mounted rancher. He carried no weapon. His open palms showed peace. Coleman's finger tightened on the trigger. Coleman! No exclamation mark, Hannah shouted. The moment hung suspended between heartbeats. Hannah had chosen mercy once. Now that choice demanded protection, even against her own kind. The land fell silent, waiting for blood to water its thirsty soil. Hannah lowered her rifle first. The gesture spoke louder than words. Coleman watched in disbelief as Tall Wolf stood his ground, weaponless against a loaded gun. They're not raiders, Hannah said. They're here because of me. The warrior who had spoken with Tall Wolf rode forward. His face bore the marks of many battles, his eyes the weight of many decisions. He stared at Coleman, then at Hannah. No fear, no compromise. This woman saved my son, he said in careful English. We protect what is hers. Coleman lowered his rifle slowly. His gaze drifted across the warriors, counting, calculating odds. 20 at least, more in the trees beyond. You're making enemies of your own people, he warned Hannah. Seems they were enemies already. Within hours, the Cheyenne had established camp near the stream. Not close enough to threaten, not far enough to suggest distance. The leader, Swift Hawk, positioned warriors at strategic points around Hannah's property. Their presence changed the air itself. Hannah found Tall Wolf checking his horse's saddle. His wounds had been redressed with poultices she didn't recognize. Your father? Tall Wolf shook his head. Still missing. The wind picked up, carrying dust and whispers from the Cheyenne camp. Some watched Hannah with open curiosity. Others refused to acknowledge her. She felt the weight of stories she hadn't heard, grievances she couldn't answer for. That night, Hannah searched through her husband's old chest. John had been meticulous about his records, unusual for a rancher. She found his journal buried beneath property deeds and letters. The leather cover was worn smooth where his hands had touched it daily. Hannah read by lantern light as the prairie winds combed through the grass outside. John's neat handwriting cataloged 3 years of ranch life. Weather, cattle counts, expenses. Then the entries changed. Meeting with Chief Black Bear tomorrow about shared water rights. Government men won't like it, but it's the right thing. 3 more entries detailed conversations with the Cheyenne leader, plans for cooperation, not conflict. The final entry was dated 2 days before John's accident, when his horse returned without him. Army colonel making threats about our meetings. Says I'm undermining government negotiations. Black Bear believes... The sentence remained unfinished. The next entry was in different handwriting. A brief note about John's death. A broken neck from a fall. No witnesses. Hannah closed the journal, her fingers tracing the abrupt change in script. The lantern flame wavered as if disturbed by a truth too heavy for its light. Morning brought army uniforms to her door. Colonel Harrington himself, flanked by 4 soldiers. His insignia caught the sunlight like a warning. "Mrs. Coulter, I understand you're harboring hostiles on your property. They're here peacefully. They're wanted for attacking an army convoy." Hannah's hand tightened on the doorframe. "Funny, the wounds I treated on their leader came from army bullets, during peace talks." Harrington's smile never reached his eyes. "Misunderstandings happen in wartime." "Is that what we're in? I thought we were in treaty negotiations." The colonel stepped closer. "You have a choice, Mrs. Coulter. Turn over any Cheyenne on your land, or be charged with aiding enemies of the United States." Hannah saw Tall Wolf watching from the shadow of the barn. Swift Hawk and his warriors had vanished into the landscape, present but invisible to untrained eyes. "There are no enemies here," she said. "Only neighbors. I'll return tomorrow, with more men. Consider your position carefully." The colonel mounted his horse. As he turned to leave, he nodded toward the ridge where Coleman watched the exchange. "Your neighbor understands the future better than you." After they departed, Hannah crossed to the barn. Tall Wolf met her inside, his face unreadable. "The soldier chief knows my father," he said. "How can you tell?" "His eyes, when you speak the name." That evening, Ethan Coleman appeared at her door unannounced. Hannah met him with her rifle. "I'm alone," he said, raising empty hands. Inside, he paced her small kitchen like a man with too many thoughts for one mind. "The railroad's coming through the valley," he said finally. "They need water rights. So that's why you want my land. It's not just me. There are powerful men behind this. Men who don't ask twice." Coleman pulled out a folded paper, a map with proposed rail lines cutting directly through Hannah's property. "They don't care about one ranch, but they care about this water, enough to create problems where none exist." "Like Indian raids?" Coleman's silence was answer enough. He glanced toward the window where darkness gathered. "You should know I'm not just a rancher." The next morning, Hannah found her husband's old steamer trunk pried open. Someone had searched it thoroughly. The journal was gone. She stormed to the Cheyenne camp, anger masking fear. Tall Wolf met her halfway. Something in his expression stopped her accusations. "We have something to show you." In Swift Hawk's tent, they laid out items wrapped in tanned hide. A silver watch, a bone pipe, papers in a leather case. Hannah recognized John's watch immediately. The papers bore Army letterhead. "Where did you get these?" "Found with my father when he disappeared," Tall Wolf said, hidden in his clothing. Swift Hawk spoke in Cheyenne. Tall Wolf translated. "He says your husband and my father were planning peace. Others wanted war." Hannah examined the papers. Orders signed by Colonel Harrington authorizing false flag operations to drive the Cheyenne from treaty lands. John must have obtained them somehow. Evidence of a conspiracy that had claimed at least 2 lives. "The colonel knows I have this," Tall Wolf said. "That is why he comes." Hannah thought of Coleman's warning, of John's unfinished journal entry, of the lies that had buried truth beneath convenient stories of savage raids and unfortunate accidents. "What will you do?" she asked. "My warriors want blood for blood, Harrington's life for my father's." "And you?" Tall Wolf's gaze met hers. Something unspoken passed between them. Recognition of wounds that vengeance couldn't heal. "I want justice. There's a difference? For my people? Always." Hannah stared at her husband's watch, its hands frozen at the moment it stopped. Time suspended between truth and consequence. "There's someone in town we should talk to," she said finally. "Someone who might help us get justice, not just revenge." Outside, storm clouds gathered on the horizon, shadow dark against the afternoon light. The wind that reached them carried the promise of rain to a thirsty land that had forgotten the taste of mercy. The territorial capital sat 2 days' ride from Hannah's ranch. She left Swift Hawk's warriors protecting her property and took only what was necessary: documents, John's watch, and determination that burned more steadily than fear. Tall Wolf insisted on accompanying her despite his wounds. They rode in silence across terrain that changed with each mile. Prairie gave way to rolling hills. Wind-bent grass turned to scrub pine. The sky stretched above them, indifferent to human concerns. Tall Wolf watched Hannah from the corner of his eye. Her profile against the sunset reminded him of the eagles his people revered, sharp-eyed, solitary, resistant to the changing winds. "Your husband," he said finally. "He was a good man." Hannah kept her eyes on the horizon. He believed in justice. Justice is a white man's word, different meanings to different men. What word would you use? Balance. The world demands balance. They camped that night beneath a limestone outcropping. Tall Wolf built a small fire, careful to keep the smoke minimal. Hannah noted how he positioned himself between her and the open plain, protector without announcement. The territorial governor's mansion loomed white and imposing among the dusty buildings of the capital. Hannah approached alone. Tall Wolf remained hidden in the stable across the street. His presence in an official building would create complications they couldn't afford. The governor's secretary took one look at Hannah's trail-worn clothing and pointed toward the door. She remained standing, hands folded over the documents she carried. "The governor sees petitioners on Thursdays." "These aren't petitions. They're evidence of crimes committed by a United States Army officer." The secretary's expression didn't change. "The governor is very busy with railroad matters." "I expect he is. So are the men trying to steal my land." Hannah placed John's watch on the desk. Its silver case caught the light, the engraving visible. "To John Coulter for exceptional service, United States Army 1861. My husband served with Governor Richardson in the war. Tell him John Coulter's widow needs 10 minutes of his time. Today?" The secretary's face softened slightly. "Wait here." Governor Richardson proved to be a tired man with shrewd eyes. He listened as Hannah explained the situation, examined the documents, and poured himself a generous whiskey when she finished. "These are serious accusations. They're not accusations, they're facts." The governor sighed. "Colonel Harrington has powerful friends in Washington. Do those friends know he's murdering peace chiefs to clear the way for railroad money?" Richardson studied her face. "You're like John, stubborn about principles. Principles are what separate us from animals. Sometimes they get us killed too." The governor promised an investigation, formal inquiries, proper channels. Hannah recognized the language of delay, of politics navigating around justice rather than toward it. But she secured his signature on official documents requesting Harrington's records and ordering him to cease operations against the Cheyenne. It wasn't everything. It was something. The return journey took longer. An unusual spring storm forced them to shelter in an abandoned trapper's cabin. Rain drummed against the sod roof, finding its way through cracks to form puddles on the dirt floor. Tall Wolf tended the small fire. His hands moved with practiced efficiency, each motion precise. Hannah watched him from the shadows, seeing not an enemy, but a man burdened with the same questions that haunted her. "Will your people honor the governor's order? If Harrington honors it first, and if he doesn't?" Tall Wolf added a stick to the fire. "Then we will have clarity." Morning revealed a transformed world. The drought-stricken land had soaked up the rain, releasing the scent of renewal. Green shoots pushed through soil that yesterday had been dust. They followed game trails through revived grassland. Hannah noticed how Tall Wolf touched plants as they passed, murmuring words she couldn't understand. Prayers, perhaps, or greetings to old friends long absent. The ridge above her ranch came into view by mid-afternoon. Hannah felt something was wrong before she could name it. The absence of smoke from her chimney. The stillness where there should be movement. Tall Wolf raised his hand for caution. They approached slowly, using the terrain for cover. Hannah's cabin stood intact but abandoned. The barn door hung open, livestock gone. The Cheyenne camp had vanished. Only trampled grass and fire pits remained. A note had been nailed to her door. Hannah recognized Colonel Harrington's handwriting immediately. Mrs. Coulter, your savage friends attempted resistance when legally detained. Their leader is now in Army custody awaiting trial for the murder of U.S. soldiers. If you wish to prevent his execution at dawn tomorrow, bring all documents in your possession to Fort Laramie and sign the enclosed transfer of water rights. Consider carefully which life you value more, a Cheyenne murderer or your husband's legacy. Attached was a deed transfer naming Ethan Coleman as the new owner of her property. Hannah's hands shook with a rage so deep it felt like stillness. Everything she had built, everything John had died protecting, reduced to a bargaining chip in a game rigged from the start. Tall Wolf read the note over her shoulder. His face revealed nothing, but his body tensed like a drawn bow. Swift Hawk would not surrender, not while protecting your land. Harrington probably came with 50 men. Then there will be many dead soldiers as well. Hannah entered her cabin. Everything of value had been taken or destroyed. John's books torn from shelves, their wedding photographs shattered on the floor. The vandalism spoke of petty vengeance, not military efficiency. She knelt and gathered the photograph, careful of broken glass. John's face stared back at her through a web of cracks. The man who believed in justice, who died for that belief. The ranch had never felt so empty. Wind moved through the rooms like a ghost, stirring dust and memories. Hannah had lost everything except the choice facing her now. Fort Laramie stood a half-day's ride away. By pushing their horses, they might arrive by midnight. But what then? 2 people against an army fortress. A woman the law barely recognized, and a man the law didn't recognize at all. I know people in town, Hannah said. People who never believed the stories about Indian raids. My warriors will come if I call them. More bloodshed won't save Swifthawk. Neither will your governor's paper. Hannah stood in the doorway of her ransacked home. The sun hung low, painting the land in colors too beautiful for such ugly truths. She thought of John's unfinished journal entry, of promises broken and lives discarded for profit. There's a difference between justice and revenge, she said, but sometimes they look the same from a distance. They rode toward town as night gathered around them. The stars emerged one by one, ancient and unconcerned with the small struggles below. Hannah felt their cold light as judgment, or perhaps witness. To what end this journey moved, not even they could say. The saloon in town fell silent when Hannah entered with Tall Wolf. Men reached for weapons, then hesitated. The barkeep nodded toward a back table where Marshal Turner sat with 3 deputies. Turner gestured them over, eyeing Tall Wolf with suspicion. Risky bringing him here. Hannah placed Harrington's note on the table. The colonel has taken Swifthawk prisoner. Execution at dawn. Turner read the note, his weathered face revealing nothing. Army business, not my jurisdiction. It's murder disguised as justice. Like your husband? Hannah's breath caught. Turner had never mentioned suspicions about John's death before. The marshal tapped the note with one finger. Coleman was here earlier, looking for men, paying cash for anyone willing to ride to Fort Laramie tonight. Which side is he on? Man's playing both ends against the middle. Always has been. 4 men from town agreed to help. A blacksmith whose Shoshone wife had family among the Cheyenne. An old trapper who'd lived with the tribes. The town doctor who'd treated Indians when others wouldn't. And surprisingly, the telegraph operator who had intercepted disturbing messages between Harrington and railroad investors. Tall Wolf slipped away to contact his warriors. They would meet at Hawks Ridge overlooking the fort. The unlikely allies gathered at sunset just beyond town limits. Horses stamped impatiently in the gathering darkness. Men checked weapons with careful hands. Each waited with the knowledge of what morning might bring. The doctor approached Hannah with something wrapped in oilcloth. Your husband left this with me. Said if anything happened to him, I should keep it safe until you needed it most. Inside was John's army revolver and a small leather pouch containing his captain's insignia, symbols of authority that might matter to soldiers trained to respect rank. Ethan Coleman found them as they prepared to ride. He came alone, unarmed, hands open at his sides. I was hoping you'd show up. Hannah raised John's revolver. Give me one reason not to shoot you now. Because I'm a federal investigator, have been for 3 years. The marshal snorted. Convenient claim. Coleman reached slowly into his vest and removed a folded document bearing government seals. I've been building a case against Harrington and his backers. Land fraud across 4 territories. Murder. Corruption that goes all the way to Washington. Why should I believe you? Hannah kept the revolver steady. Because I've been protecting you as much as I could. Feeding false information to Harrington. Buying time. While pressuring me to sell. Had to maintain my cover, needed proof of the conspiracy. The marshal examined Coleman's credentials. These look genuine. I need those documents from Black Bear, Coleman said. The ones that prove Harrington ordered false flag attacks. Tall Wolf stepped forward. My father is still missing. I know where they're holding him. Fort Laramie's walls rose from the prairie like teeth in the moonlight. Sentries paced the perimeter, rifles catching occasional gleams from lamps within. The main gate stood closed for the night, guarded by 2 soldiers who looked more bored than vigilant. From Hawk's Ridge, Hannah studied the layout through an old spyglass. The gallows had been erected in the central yard. A figure sat slumped beside it, guarded by a single soldier. Swift Hawk. Coleman pointed to a low building near the eastern wall. Harrington's office. Black Bear is being held in the root cellar beneath it. How do we get in? The blacksmith asked. I have men inside. Soldiers who've grown sick of Harrington's methods. The plan formed quickly. The telegraph operator would deliver an urgent message for the colonel, creating a distraction at the main gate. Coleman's men inside would unlock the side entrance. The doctor and blacksmith would free Swifthawk while Hannah, Coleman, and the marshal confronted Harrington with the evidence. Tall Wolf and his warriors would remain outside as insurance, entering only if signaled. Hannah felt the watch in her pocket. John's final legacy. His belief in justice about to be tested against corruption's reality. They moved under cover of darkness. The telegraph operator strode confidently to the main gate, waving an envelope. Guards admitted him without question. Urgent messages were common enough. Minutes later, shouts erupted from the headquarters building. The planned distraction. Hannah and her group slipped through the side gate, guided by a nervous young corporal. The colonel's in his office, he whispered. Drunk. Angry about something from Washington. They separated according to plan. Hannah followed Coleman and Turner toward headquarters, John's revolver hidden in her skirts. The night air carried the scent of pine smoke and saddle leather. Normal smells in a place about to fracture. Harrington's office glowed with lamplight. Through the window, Hannah saw him at his desk, glass in hand. Papers scattered across the surface like fallen leaves. The man who had ordered John's death, who now threatened everything she had built. They entered without knocking. Harrington looked up, surprise turning to calculation when he recognized them. Mrs. Coulter, your Cheyenne friend hangs at dawn. Have you brought the signed deed? I've brought something better, Hannah said. Witnesses. The colonel's laugh held no humor. To what? Legal execution of an enemy combatant? Coleman placed Black Bear's documents on the desk. To conspiracy, murder, violations of treaty law. Meaningless scraps, my word against a dead chief's. And mine, Coleman said, revealing his federal badge. I've documented everything, Harrington. Every meeting with railroad investors, every false report to Washington, every order, countermanding official peace policy. Harrington's face hardened. His hand moved toward a drawer. I wouldn't, Marshal Turner said quietly, revealing his own pistol. Outside, a whistle sounded, the signal that Swifthawk had been freed. Harrington heard it too. His eyes darted to the window, calculating escape routes, weighing options that narrowed by the second. You have nothing, he said finally. Nothing that will stand in a military court. We have Black Bear, Hannah said. For the first time, uncertainty crossed Harrington's face. Alive, Coleman confirmed. My men found him yesterday, half-starved but lucid, ready to testify about your ambush during peace talks." Harrington lunged for his desk drawer. The marshal fired, striking the colonel's shoulder. He collapsed back, blood spreading across his uniform jacket. "You fools," he gasped. "You have no idea who you're dealing with. The powers behind this will crush you all." The fort erupted into chaos. Soldiers loyal to Harrington exchanged fire with Coleman's men. Hannah ducked beneath a window as bullets shattered glass above her. Through the door burst Swifthawk, followed by the blacksmith. The Cheyenne leader's face was gaunt from captivity, but his eyes burned with recognition when he saw Harrington wounded on the floor. "Justice," he said in English, drawing a knife. "No!" Hannah stepped between them. "Not like this." The sounds of fighting intensified. Outside, war cries announced Tall Wolf's warriors entering the fort. The night fractured into pockets of violence, old grievances finding new expression in blood and fire. Harrington used the distraction to lunge for Hannah. They struggled for John's revolver. A shot exploded between them. The colonel staggered back, surprise in his eyes as red bloomed across his chest. Not from Hannah's gun, from Tall Wolf's arrow, perfectly placed through the window. Dawn found them gathered on the ridge above the fort. Coleman's men had secured the surrender of Harrington's remaining loyalists. The evidence would go to Washington. Promises of investigations, tribunals, justice through proper channels. Black Bear embraced his son with dignity that transcended their ordeal. Their private words needed no translation. Swifthawk stood apart, watching Hannah with newfound respect. The territorial governor arrived by midday, drawn by urgent telegrams. More talk, more promises. Hannah listened without hearing. The words were smoke, temporary as morning fog burning off under the rising sun. 1 week later, formal treaty negotiations resumed. Hannah's water rights were protected in writing, her land secured against future claims. Black Bear sat across from Army representatives, his quiet dignity a rebuke to those who had tried to erase him. Tall Wolf found Hannah by the stream that had started everything. She sat with John's journal open on her lap, finally completing his unfinished entry with her own account of the truth. "The paper justice satisfies you?" he asked. "Justice isn't in the paper. It's in what we do with truth once we know it." They spoke of separate worlds bridged momentarily by common cause, of traditions that couldn't be translated but might be respected, of debts paid in blood and water. At the formal signing ceremony, Hannah and Tall Wolf stood together, their unlikely alliance noticed by officials from both sides. The governor congratulated himself on peace restored through proper channels. The Army representatives spoke of misunderstandings regrettably addressed. Hannah spotted a familiar figure boarding the eastbound train. Harrington, bandaged but very much alive. His wound treated, his influence apparently sufficient to avoid immediate consequences. Political connections protecting him from justice yet again. Her eyes met Tall Wolf's across the crowd. No words passed between them. None were needed. The old understanding remained. Some debts could only be paid one way. 3 days later, Colonel Harrington's body was found 50 miles downriver, a single Cheyenne arrow through his heart. When the marshal questioned her, Hannah simply said, "Justice finds its own path." That night, Tall Wolf returned from a journey, his eyes meeting hers across the fire. Neither spoke of Harrington as he placed a single eagle feather on her table. She picked up the feather, understanding at last that mercy and justice were sometimes the same blade, cutting in different directions.